Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Welcome to the 8th webinar organized by the Bridging Science and Business Working Group of the Marie Curie Alumni Association. I'm Rahul Bansal. I am Deputy Director of Education for Climate KIC. KIC stands for Knowledge Innovation Community. We are an EU initiative where we work on innovation to bring innovation to market, to encourage the adoption of innovation. And our focus is on climate change. So we work in smart cities, in kind of urban transition, in land use, forestry, agriculture, in manufacturing, and decision metrics and finance. My background is I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I've started 4 companies, scaled them up, and then started looking for something more purposeful in my life when I joined Climate KIC. And I've been working with Climate KIC for 6 years now. I had good exits on my businesses. And now when I work with entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs, it's very inspirational for me to see how people are working and what they are doing. So today, we'll just talk about kind of entrepreneurial journey and how you go through that journey and some of the pitfalls. So it's a very, very brief webinar. We are looking at me presenting for around 40-45 minutes, but then I would really want to encourage you to post a lot of questions, and so I can answer them towards the end. I would also like to announce that the working group is organizing an event in Paris on the 5th and 6th July that will bring together entrepreneurs, investors, and researchers. The Alumni Association will soon share a link with more information on the YouTube chat. So keep an eye on the YouTube chat to find more information as well as to post your questions. And while we go through the discussion, while I'm presenting, anything pops up, just put it on YouTube chat. No question is a bad question, so don't shy away. That's being entrepreneurial as well. So let's make it more interactive. That's it from my side. And now I'll just share my screen. I've put together some slides. I hope the technology works. So let us try. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay, I believe you can. Perfect. So I've just introduced myself. Whenever I meet entrepreneurs, and for my work, I travel a lot in Europe, outside, and I meet a lot of young people. And when I say young, I don't mean age, but people who are young from their heart and their brain, and who are still very dynamic and looking to make difference in their life and in the society. So one question which pops up is, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And it's a very important and a fundamental question. And if you are looking at that journey, then it's important for you to think about why you want to be an entrepreneur. Is it to make a difference in the society? Is it to create impact? Is it because you have a great idea and you want to see it being implemented? Is it because you want to make a lot of money? Is it because you like your independence, you like your freedom, and you don't want to work for someone else? Is it because you want to try something new, try something different? Could be anything. When I was young, I started my first business at the age of 20 years, and I just wanted to take something small and make it really big. That was my drive. For me, money has never been a driver. It has always been an outcome. This is, we all see a complicated kind of bridges and roads and, intertwining here and there. This is actually X-ray of entrepreneur's brain. It shows the confusion and the mess and everything in an entrepreneur when you start your journey of entrepreneurship. Who's your customer? How will you find funding? Who are you going to sell this product? Who's going to buy your product? What is your value proposition? Do I go to market like this, or do I go to market like that? What's my business model? So it's confusion, it's mess. And you're not the only one. It's a very, very common case for entrepreneurs who are starting. You are in that desperate situation when you're setting up the business. And some of you who have studied marketing would have learned about 4 Ps. But here, 4 Ps are please, please, please buy my product. That first sale you want to do, if you're selling a service or a product, you just want to go out and sell it, and you want someone to buy it. And you are stuck in this cycle of, running around and, I have to do this, I have to do that. When I was running my first business, we didn't have money to pay salaries for next month for my staff. It gets stressful. But coming from this state of mind, if you're looking at setting up a business, this is where you want to be. You want to be an entrepreneur who has clarity of thoughts. You want to know what you are doing, where you are going, how you are doing it, how you want to build your business. And this is something which will keep changing as you grow your business, as you set up your business. But you need to have that clarity. And that can come from having a coach, having a mentor, having an advisory board, having your friends and family with whom you can discuss and have clarity. Lot of us are dreaming of being an entrepreneur, and it has become a very sexy word. We hear about entrepreneurship everywhere. People like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, they've made it very trendy. So a lot of us have started idealizing them, not for the bad practices, but for being an entrepreneur and setting up something small and scaling it up. But the journey is difficult. When you get in, when you start every day, it's difficult. It's not working. Every day you feel like giving up. Most of you are very intelligent, very kind of brilliant, smart young people, and you can always go and find a job. And you think, why am I slogging every day to set up this business when I can just go and have a comfortable life? And that is why you need to know why you want to be an entrepreneur, which you have to remind yourself every day of your entrepreneurial journey to keep going. You need to have passion. You need to have grit. You need to be resilient. You need to just go for it. And then you will enjoy the journey. When I was running my businesses, there were times when I would work 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. I would never feel tired. I would never feel exhausted, because you really enjoy that. If you love driving, you can drive for hours and hours. If you love swimming, you can swim for days and days. What are the kind of challenges which are coming up in the entrepreneurial space, especially if you look at the Europe and some of the economies outside Europe? There is a lot of grassroots entrepreneurship. You meet so many people with good ideas. The ideas become startups. They also become SMEs, small or medium-sized companies. But if you see in last 2-3 decades, especially in Europe, we haven't seen a lot of big companies coming out of it. We haven't seen the Apples and the Googles of the world coming out of Europe. And one of the reasons for that is we still have a culture of being scared of failure. The society does not always accept if you have failed. For me, there's no word like failure. If you have tried setting up a business 2-3 times and it did not work, if you go and look for a job, then will the employers tell you, mate, you have very good experience because you've tried and you are very passionate about things, I want to hire you? But we don't see that. But even starting a business is not enough. You have to scale it up. You need to make it a bigger company, because for whatever reason you are doing it, be it to create impact, be it to see your idea or your technology or your research being implemented, be it to make money, you want big scale. Otherwise, you can just do a job and they see a little bit of implementation of your vision around the idea or of making money. But scaling up business is not easy. It requires constant innovation. So from idea to setting up a small startup, to making it a small company, to medium company, to big company, and even after becoming a big company, you have to innovate continuously. Otherwise, you just disappear. I hope you all remember this company. A lot of you might be really young people who probably have not come across Kodak, but Kodak was a company which had market share and market domination. They had almost 85% market share in 1990s. And that's the time when digital photography was coming, and Kodak thought it's just a blip in the market, and digital photography will come and go, and nothing can move Kodak out of business. 2 years from 85% market share, they came down to 10%. And now you see Kodak is not a big player. Similarly, Nokia, which was the global leader in mobile phones, in 2-3 years, they just were completely wiped out. And there's a joke which goes around that they were too busy manufacturing phones that they forgot to look at the market, and they forgot to innovate their business model and innovate their products. BlackBerry was another company. I remember 10 years ago when I was in business school, everyone had BlackBerry, and all the professionals would just work on BlackBerries. And then you saw the Apples and the Samsungs coming to the market, and again in a couple of years, from 100 billion valuation came down to 2 billion, and then almost out of business. Whereas if you see a company like Google, which did not exist probably more than a decade ago, is now worth 90 billion, is now doing a revenue of 90 billion annually. And have you ever paid anything to search on Google? Have you paid anything to send an email on Gmail? Have you paid for watching most of the YouTube videos? No, everything is free. So what? Google is a charity? Are they doing charity here for us? No, they have a business which makes money for them. This graph just shows from around 1960s up until now, and kind of another 5-10 years going forward. It has become more and more difficult for companies to last very long. Their lifespan on S&P 500 index, which is the kind of Standard and Poor, which the index for big companies, is just reducing. So the innovation, the pace at which the companies have to innovate, and the way they have to innovate with the business model, bringing sustainability into their business, looking at inclusive growth, employee engagement, it's becoming more challenging. And in 1960s, where the average company lifespan was 61, 62 years, is going to come down to 10 to 15 years in 2025, 2030. But on the other side, the cost to set up a business has reduced substantially. Around 20 years ago, on average, you were required to have 5 million capital to set up a business. You would have physical space, you would have an office, you will have staff, you will have, if you are a manufacturing unit, machines. But now, any one of you who has a laptop, has a room with internet, can go and set up a business. And that is why when the barriers for setting up businesses and launching businesses have gone down substantially, the threat for big companies are multiplying. Companies like Google, companies like BMW, Apple, they are thinking every day which entrepreneur in which garage is coming up with an idea which can disrupt our business model completely. So looking at companies like Kodak, Nokia, and BlackBerry, they had great products. The products have always been accepted in the market, but that itself was not enough. So when you're looking at a business, just having a great product is not enough. You cannot just go and with a good product, and people will come and buy it. You need something more than product innovation when you go out and do business. And you have to always think about business model. And I've done a lot of work with people who come from technical background, scientific background, research background, or people who are subject matter experts. We sometimes tend to focus too much on the product, and we forget that there is an element of looking at customers, identifying markets, looking at a financial model, a revenue model, looking at the team engagement. So all those aspects together form the business model. When you go out, there is competition, so you have to take care of competition as well. So never get stuck just on the product. Always think of the business model. And if you look at Google, we were saying you don't pay to use a lot of their services, but they are still making $90 billion. And when Google came to market as a search engine, it was not the first search engine in the market. You had Hotmail, you had MSN, you had all these search engines, but their business model was not as innovative as Google's. And Google, through pay-per-click and through paid advertisement, started monetizing services which were provided for free by competitors. And from a search engine or an email service provider, they became a data analytics company. So now Google is a data analytics company, and that's all what they do. They don't sell you anything else except data analytics, and that is how they make money. Some of us use Google Chrome, their browser, which is available for free. And I have a very good friend who works for Google, and we were discussing what is the business model behind Google Chrome. And Google, not being a charity, cannot just give Google Chrome for free and keep investing in it. And he told me that every time you download Google Chrome and start using it, on average, Google makes $100 on that over the lifetime, because the default search engine set on Google Chrome is Google. And when you usually tend to just go on the menu bar and start searching there, and it automatically picks up Google as the search engine and gives data to Google, which they then monetize because they are a data analytics company. So what is a business model? So business model is how the business does what it does, and that how involves everything what we were talking about. It's how it creates value, how it acquires value. And there's focus around value here, because what you are offering to the customer is not your product. It's not your service. You are providing value to the customer. When BMW goes out and sells cars, they're not selling cars. They're providing value. And if your focus is on that value proposition, then you will always think of the customer and their pain points and see how you can address those pain points. So your business model will help you create value. It will help you transfer that value to customers. It will help you as an entity to acquire that value. How do you keep that value to yourself? How do you integrate that value into your business model? And how do you store it for longer term? This is a very, very simple depiction of business model. So on the left, it's just for a let's say a lemonade little pop-up. So the value which you are creating is the lemonade, which you then sell to customers. So you have that product or service which goes to the customer. Then the customers consume that, and for that they pay to the organization. The value which organization has captured is the revenue which has been created from that, the one lemonade sale. So let's look at McDonald's, and I'm assuming that you all are familiar with McDonald's. So McDonald's, as we might know, sells burgers and fries and Coke and ice cream. So it's a fast food business. But if you look at the value proposition of McDonald's, it's actually in real estate business. If you see McDonald's, you have McDonald's in all the high streets, anywhere in the world, you go to any big city, you will always have 3 or 4 McDonald's. I was in China last year. There were probably seven in Shanghai. There were probably 7 or 8 McDonald's on the high street. So what they do is when the city is kind of growing, they go in and they buy all the properties and real estate in important locations, and then the real estate value starts to appreciate. So if you look at McDonald's balance sheet, that is where you have your assets. You see huge assets sitting there from all the real estate investments they've done. And McDonald's is I find it quite smart what they do. Some of us I'm currently in London. I'm in London and in Europe. We use McDonald's as public toilets because there are no public toilets here. So whenever you have to go, you'll just go in the McDonald's, and we sometimes think, oh, McDonald's doesn't know that we are using them as public toilet. But it's a pretty smart strategy because by offering free toilets, they are getting you inside their store, and you are going in McDonald's, and you would, if you think about it, you will see toilets are always on the diametrically opposite end of the entrance. So you have to go through McDonald's and either in the basement or on the first floor. And while you are there, while you go to the toilet, you think, I might just have a burger, or I might just have a quick Coke or some fries, because it's fast food. It will just take 2 minutes to get your food and you can eat it quickly. So companies spend hundreds of millions just to get customers in their store. And here McDonald's is doing it by offering free toilet. That's quite cheap. A lot of you would probably recognize this brand as well. It's Starbucks. So Starbucks offers coffee, right? And so what they sell is coffee and some snacks, and now their menu is now becoming more. They have more kind of choice of snacks in their menu. But if you look at the value proposition, what Starbucks sells to its customer is it's a working space, and that's what their CEO and that's what the company talks about. And Starbucks says, if you don't want to work in your office, if you don't want to work at home, then come and work at Starbucks. We will give you free space to sit, comfortable space. We will give you free internet. We will give you free air conditioning. And no one will say anything to you, even if you sit for hours, except for one incident which happened in the US a few months back. So someone like me, who, when I was setting up my business in London after MBA, I mean, for me, entrepreneurs beg, borrow, and steal. So they don't have the luxury of tens of millions of funding with them from day one to afford nice offices, and especially in cities like London, Paris, Copenhagen, Zurich, where it's very expensive. So my office was Starbucks. I would go there at 9 o'clock in the morning and work there till 8 p.m. every day. And I will have my own table. I'll drink a lot of coffee, and I'll do my business from there. So they gave me free internet, free air conditioning, and all the services. And no one would ever come and ask you, sir, do you need a coffee? Sir, do you need anything? Ma'am, do you need anything? Because that is their way of saying you basically need to get out because you are just occupying a table. And in my office, I would just go to the next table in Starbucks when I have a meeting. So then I have a new office, quote unquote, where I can just go and do my meetings and come back to my table to get on with the work. So McDonald's value proposition is very different. But now in last 2-3 years, if you would have noticed, McDonald's is changing their business model. They probably don't like people like me sitting there from 9 a.m. till 8 p.m. So they are removing a lot of their comfortable couches and sofas with hardwood chairs. They are putting bar stools, which are not very comfortable to sit. They've reduced the number of power sockets. They've reduced the intensity of light in their cafes. They've increased the air conditioning. They've increased the volume of music. So after 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, you feel uncomfortable and you don't sit for very long. So you don't have conversations for too long because the music is very loud. So you don't just use it for 10 hours, 12 hours. Whereas if you would have noticed, McDonald's is now introducing a lot of comfortable chairs and comfortable sofas and more colorful. They are giving iPads where kids can play. In the past, I would never go and sit in McDonald's for more than 15 minutes or 30 minutes. I've eaten my burger and I'm out. But now McDonald's is moving more towards Starbucks, where they want people to sit there for 2, 3 hours and just chit chat and spend some time. Whereas Starbucks is moving more towards McDonald's, where they don't want people to be there for 10 hours. So they still sell coffee, they still sell burgers, they still sell the same product, but the business model is changing. Uh, Someone has just asked whether you need management background to design business models. You need to have some basic understanding of management if you're running a business. It's a good practice. But there is a very good book by Alexander Osterwalder, and we can share it later, which is super good. You just read it, one book, and you will be an expert on business model. And uh, I I read it many years ago, and it gave me a very strong foundation on business models. Now, going back to another example, and I'm assuming a lot of you are in Europe, Ryanair and EasyJet, and the equivalent is Southwest Airlines or AirAsia or the kind of no-frill cheap airlines. When they are looking at so Ryanair, EasyJet is an airline, Lufthansa is also an airline. So their job is to take people from one location to the other. But if you look at the business model, EasyJet or Ryanair, their competition is not with Lufthansa. If I am a business customer, if I travel comfortably, I will travel Lufthansa. I will not think of Ryanair as a competition, that Ryanair is giving me a ticket for £10 or €10 and Lufthansa is giving me for €200. I will go with Lufthansa. So there is no competition there. But if I have the option of going from city A to city B, uh, on a train, or I can drive, or I can take a bus, or I can do Ryanair, then there is a competition. So Ryanair's competition is with any mode of transport which can take you from city A to city B. And that is how you think from a business model perspective rather than the product. Both airlines both take people from city A to city B almost the same time, but from a business model perspective, your competition is very different. Excuse me. Similarly, if you look at the cinema halls, and a lot of us probably watch movies. I mean, I watch a lot of movies. That's how I unwind when I'm tired and stressed. Cinema halls in the past used to be standalone, and you would just go, and there'll just be cinema halls. But uh, imagine when on a Friday evening, you and your girlfriend or boyfriend are in a romantic mood and you're thinking of going out for Friday evening. Will you think whether we should go to cinema A or cinema B? Or will you think whether you should go to cinema or drive or dinner or walk? So your competition, if I'm a cinema owner, my competition is not just with another cinema hall. If I am Odeon, my competition is not just with Podium, which is another cinema hall company. My competition is any experience which gives an alternate choice for customers to choose against coming to my business. So if that couple decides to go for dinner instead of coming to cinema, then I've lost my customer, and that is a competition for me. So now, based on that thinking, which is kind of a business model thinking rather than we are just showing movies, a lot of cinemas are now moving into malls where if you come for a movie, then There are restaurants there just next to the cinema. There are places for kids to enjoy. You can walk around. So they are attracting even those customers who want to go for dinner, but then they might also do the movie as well. So they are reducing the competition by cohabiting with the other alternate sources. So you always have to think about the business models, and you have to see how that proposition of your business can be positioned in the market to address the needs of your customers. This is business model is a very, very well researched area, and it's been around for decades. And it was quite confusing and difficult to comprehend what a business model is. Like, what is it? So Alexander Osterwalder, who I just mentioned some time back, he was doing research and he came up with this canvas. So he said, your business model is like a canvas. And what do you do on a canvas as a painter? You paint, and you think imaginatively. It's like a blank canvas. You put colors, you reflect your thinking and in a business model canvas as well, you paint your business strategy. You think of who your customers are, how do you deliver the value to them, what resources do you need, who do you partner with. And in the canvas, business model canvas, which, like, we can do a separate webinar on that, but in a business model canvas, when you do the workshops, when you do the exercise, you never write with a pen on the canvas, because your business model is a very dynamic entity. It keeps changing every day, every week, every month, every year. Today you are thinking, this is my customer segment. Tomorrow it changes. So we always use Post-its. So when I was running my business in my office, after Starbucks, I had an office as well. I had business model canvas for my business in my office, and I had all these Post-its, because your value proposition changes, how you position it in the market changes, so your customer segment changes. So you remove the Post-it and you put a new one. I'll give you an example. Let's say I have a business of selling magazines, and uh, my business which sells magazines, so my customers would be people who read magazines. Let's say I'm taking a very, very crude example. Now, let's say my magazine has a lot of content for women related issues. So my customer segment from all the people who read magazines becomes people who like reading about women's issues. And a lot of them would be women, but that could be men as well. Now, my magazine has content mostly for kind of menopause women, women who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. So my customer segment is people who read magazines, who are more women, and women who are 40 plus. But the paper I use, the printing and the quality is quite sophisticated. It's an expensive magazine. So my customer segment becomes people who read magazines, who are women above 40 but are rich, who like reading expensive magazines. So that is how you really focus down on your customer segment. So now if my magazine is for rich women, and if I start advertising on Metro, where a lot of these rich women don't go, then I'm not going to do a very focused marketing, and I'm not going to get a lot of customers there. So fleshing out customer segment helps. Channels is, how do you deliver that value? Is it online? Is it one-to-one? Are you selling a yacht? Are you selling an aeroplane? Are you selling candies? Are you selling a service? Is the best way to call people? Is it through website? So those are the kind of things which come under channels. Customer relationship is about how do you keep relationship with your customers, because it requires a lot of investment to build relationship with a customer. Then how do you make sure that you keep that relationship going, and you want them to buy the services again and again? Even if you are selling aeroplanes, you want them to buy maintenance services, you want them to buy repairs or whatever. At the core of the business is the value proposition, which is what your business is offering and what kind of challenges and needs is it addressing. And it's the heart, it's the core, it's the center of what your business model is, it's what your business is. Then you have key activities. So what are the activities you have to do to deliver that value. Those activities could be you have to do marketing, you have to do research, you have to do sales, you have to do your staff management, your branding. So that comes under activities, and that the book kind of quite nicely explains all of these things. Key resources is, what are your tangible and intangible assets? What resources do you need? You need people, you need researchers, you need people with technical expertise, you need people with design thinking, you need people in marketing, you need a brand, which is a big asset. If you look at valuation of Apple, if it's 700 billion, 800 billion, not all of it is the physical assets which they have. It also includes the intangible value of brand. If I go and buy Apple's brand, where I will not get even a single physical asset, it's going to be worth hundreds of billions. Key partners are organizations or individuals you would want to partner with to create that value. So they're not really your customers, but they work with you to create value. And then you see at the bottom is the revenue and the cost. So revenue is when you sell the value proposition, what is the revenue you get, and the cost is to create the value. So if you look at this canvas, it's like a story. At the core, you have the value proposition. So that's the value which you create. On the right is your customers, what's happening outside your business, and you deliver that value. And on the left is kind of, your back end working together to create the value. And at the bottom, you see revenue minus cost, which is the profit. And that is where you capture the value. So core, create value. On the right side, you deliver value. On the left side, you create value. And at the bottom, you capture value. Another example, Nespresso, which again had a great product, was struggling to sell coffee. And now you see Nespresso machines were really fancy but really confusing to use everywhere. And they came up with this new business model of focusing on the capsule or the pod which goes in the machine, and really make it a big successful business. We probably in another session will go into more details on the Nespresso business model. Now, what Nespresso did, they would sell one machine, and they would sell machine from everywhere, online, offline, Nespresso stores, any other store, you Carrefour, wherever you can buy a machine. But the coffee pods, they kept the sale with themselves, because they knew you would buy a machine once in 2-3 years, but you would buy coffee capsules, coffee pods every week, every month, and that is where the real value capture is for them. If you look at similar models, printer and cartridge, printers are quite cheap relatively, but the cartridge are really expensive. And each printer will have a different kind of cartridge. So if you bought the printer, you keep buying cartridge from that same manufacturer. And that is where the companies make money. Similarly, razor and blade, you've once bought the razor, you have to buy the blade from the same brand which fits into that razor. And another example, and I'm a kind of a great fan of Apple. Most of my things are Apple. iTunes, some of you have used iTunes. Once you have synchronized everything on iTunes, you are pretty much locked into their system. So you buy their apps, you buy their songs, everything through iTunes. And Apple has probably sold around 35 billion songs on iTunes, and they keep around 30% on each song. So imagine a song for £1, £2, £3, €1, €2, €3. 30% they are getting just to give you a platform where you can buy songs. They didn't get Justin Bieber to come and sing a song. They didn't get Rihanna to sing a song. They didn't do production, anything, just to give a platform. So that's a business model. They are not the producers of the record companies and the labels. That the business model is making them money. And now, in probably another 5 minutes, I'll just talk about some kind of hanging issues which keep coming to our minds every now and then. So first is competition. Whatever you're selling, like whatever, and I repeat again, whatever you're selling, there is going to be competition out there. There might be direct competition, what we say as the primary competition. There might be secondary. There are, for example, cinema halls having competition with restaurants and dinner experience, airlines having competition with trains, but there will be competition. So till the time you are in an incubation center or you are in your lab, it's all nice. But be prepared. When you go out, there is going to be cutthroat competition. Second, we've all noticed that little red apple at the top. And because this red apple stands out among all the green apples. So when you try to define your value proposition, when you try to position your business model, try to do it in a way that you can differentiate yourself. So, all of us are so overwhelmed with the stimulus, with the advertisements, online, offline, metro, bus, airport, on our phones. How will you make sure your business stands out when the customer has to think about fulfilling that need which your product or service fulfills? Third is a perceptual map, and it's such a beautiful, simple tool or a template to use. You have the x-axis, y-axis, where you plot your key variables, and then you start to map the competition. And I've just pulled it out from the internet for automobile companies, for example. On the y-axis, you have high price, low price. On the x-axis, you have low quality, high quality. And you see that high price, high quality, you have Audi, Porsche, Mercedes, BMW. Whereas on the low price, low quality, you have Kia and Citroen and Renault and Volkswagen. You can see where the competition is, and then you see some companies like Ford, Toyota, Honda have put themselves in giving good quality but relatively low price. So, but then there are also some companies like Mini Cooper which are high price but low on the quality. So you see suddenly there's a big gap in the quadrant with high quality, low price. And if you can come up with a product where you can position yourself here, then you will immediately see at low price you're giving at high quality to your customers. Similar kind of mapping you will see in restaurants as well, where Subway, for example, low price and healthy food, they started offering, and they saw the gap in the market, and now a lot of companies are doing that. Pick your niche. See where you can find in that crowded. So, when you get on metro in the morning when you go to university or office, it's a crowded metro, but you find that little spot where you can stand and you can find your place. So that is how, when you're looking at your business in the market, you have to find your niche. You have to see how you position yourself. Uber, for example, has this Uber chopper service, and for senior people, executives, going to the airport, and for example, at London Heathrow, it takes 34 minutes from the time you reach and do fast track and reach and do the boarding. Now, if that 34 minutes can be, and especially for short journeys, if that 34 minutes can be reduced to 17, then, or to 12, then that's a lot of time saved for people who have to travel 2 times a day, 3 times a day, every day. I met a company in a conference, Vector something, who offer similar service for senior executives. For example, if they want to go from Paris to New York in the morning, do a 1-hour meeting and come back in the evening. So how do you optimize the journey? So they do door-to-door service where they would have designed the taxi route from the office or home to the airport. They would have a separate channel. The flight will just go for the executive. It's a small plane. So everything they optimize, so the whole journey can be smooth and efficient. This is quite important because we sometimes get into this trap of just thinking price as the money which people pay. And the price is much more than the actual money. So if I have to buy a loaf of bread, and if I can buy it for €2 from the shop next door and €1.50 from a shop which is 1 mile or 1 kilometer away from my place, then although I'm paying less money for the loaf of bread which I get from 1 kilometer away, the time which is required, the thinking I have to do, whether I buy it from here or there, and the actual effort of going 1 kilometer and buying the loaf of bread actually makes it look more expensive than the 50-cent saving I'm doing on the bread. So when you're thinking of pricing your proposition, don't just think of how much money people are paying, but to think when they have to make a decision, is it a difficult decision to make? What kind of, whether I go to cinema or whether I go to movies, is it a difficult decision? But if I know, if I go to cinema or dinner, but if I know the cinema and the dinner are both at the same place, then my thinking, my cognitive activity has really gone down and I can make decisions very quickly. So always think of price like that. We talked about scaling up whatever you're doing, right? So if you're setting up something, always from day one, think how will you scale it up? Because when you are then looking at delivery channels, when you're looking at defining your proposition, you always have to keep in mind how will you scale it up. But you always have to be careful and think the scale up should not be so fast that you're not able to manage it from your expertise, your team, the kind of skills and people you bring in. And it's the team which is the most critical factor behind success of any startup. When we invest, we always look at team, then we look at the business idea. Because if the team is not good, even if you give them excellent idea, they will mess it up. And if the team is super good, even if you give them an average idea, they will pull it off. So when you're looking at scalability, make sure the scale up happens in a way which can be managed. There was a really small village bakery, and they did one of these Groupon marketing. They were quite popular. They were selling 20, 30 cupcakes every day. They did Groupon and they got an order for 900 cupcakes in like 2 days or 1 week, which there was no way they could have delivered because they did not have the capacity. So, but as part of the commitment to Groupon, they had to deliver it. So eventually the business went bankrupt and it was shut down. So always be careful when you scale up. Think of designing a business model in ways that it's very difficult for your customers to switch to another product. Nespresso, once you have bought the machine, you have spent €1,000. Even if you're paying more money to buy those capsules, you will still keep buying them because the switching cost is very high. Once you have bought the printer, even if the cartridge is expensive, you will still keep buying because the switching cost is very high. Once you are on that Apple interface, you have to stay there because now I have 2 MacBooks, an iPhone, an iPod. Now I'm totally stuck in the Apple interface. Now I cannot think of going and buying one Samsung phone because it will not sync all my business notes, my contacts, my all the kind of personal things and music and everything. So the switching cost has gone up. Recurring revenue. How will you make sure people keep downloading songs from iTunes, keep buying blades? So if you're selling something, where is the recurring revenue coming? And then this is the last slide. Sorry, I went 5 minutes overboard. Risk. There is no business which does not have risk. There is absolutely no business which does not have risk. And there is no business in the world which does not have risk. So I'm repeating it again and again. It's better for you to think about the risk. It's a good practice to have a risk register where you keep logging all the risk and see which are the risks which you might face in the near future, in the long term, which are really detrimental to business. A company like Cambridge Analytica, their kind of work they did went bankrupt because the risk was so high, so detrimental to the business. So that will help you. There's no problem if the business has risk. The problem is when you don't know what the risk is and it comes as a surprise. If you know what the risk is, then you always will think of strategies to manage the risk. And then being an entrepreneur means you are risk taking. But then there is I pulled out the wrong photo. I was thinking of talking about Tom and Jerry. And if you have watched Tom and Jerry, Tom is always trying to hit Jerry, but ends up hitting herself. And I'm saying there is a fine line between taking a calculated risk and doing something dumb. So you have to make sure you don't do something dumb, like which is a blunder, and then you are telling yourself that you're just taking a calculated risk. Going back to my kind of I've done the journey of being an entrepreneur, and it's very rewarding and it's very satisfying. And when you look back, you really feel proud, and it's very kind of visionary. But you always have to think of business models when you're doing your business. And I've just pulled out one slide from Steve Jobs, what he said, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. So you sometimes need to be a bit crazy about what you're doing, how you're doing in your, if you're thinking of starting a business, if you think your idea is crazy, that is where disruption happens. So that's it from my side. This is my email address. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Sorry, I had to rush through it. We've had some questions. I believe we have around, let me switch on the camera because it's, am I on camera? I think so. Okay. So perfect. So let me, we've got a few questions. We have around 8 minutes, but let me pick some of the questions. Do I need business management background to design my business model? So I was addressing it a bit in the beginning as well. You need basic understanding of business management. You don't need business background. When I did my first business, I was 20 years old. I was doing my engineering. I probably did not know anything about business, but I was reading. I was trying to understand, what does strategy mean? What does marketing mean? What does brand mean? What does accounting and those kind of things? And specifically for business model, just read the book, Alexander Osterwalder, and that'll be helpful. We have an idea, we are clear regarding business model, but how to get started with limited risk. And we briefly touched upon this towards the end, that limited risk is how you will make sure the risk becomes limited. So you have to first identify the risk. You have to categorize whether it's high risk, medium risk, low risk for your business. And then you have to think of mitigation strategies for your risk. Companies like, I've met a lot of senior people, and I'm sure you would have met as well, from big companies. Every day they are talking about the risk. I'm in a big business conference. We have CXOs from big companies, and they're all talking about the impact of climate change on their business, on sustainability, of social inclusion. So you have to think of the risk and you have to look at mitigation strategies. How to do market survey before starting some business. That's a very good point, and it's a very good practice to, one, understand your market, second, to test your business model. Imagine I'm Airbus and I launch an aeroplane without testing it, or if I launch a car without testing it, it could be quite detrimental. Similarly, if you launch a business where you haven't tested the business model, your idea, it could be very detrimental for your customers, for your brand, for your business, for you as an entrepreneur. We don't want you as an entrepreneur to stop being an entrepreneur. If the idea is bad, we can shut down the idea and start a new business. But if you as an entrepreneur starts thinking and feeling that I'm not a good entrepreneur and I should probably go and take up a job, then that's one entrepreneur gone off the list. So you have to be a bit subtle when you do your market surveys, so the customers don't know about your business in a very obvious way. But as soon as you launch the business, everything about the business is going to come out. So be prepared that people will be there ready to copy your business. Like Uber is out there, so anyone and everyone can copy it. I just want to know how to apply all this info to science ideas. A good reference book or a course suggestion would be great. Thank you. We will post the exact link to the book, but the kind of concepts and the discussion we have had are all equally relevant to any business coming from any background. whether it's a deep tech business, whether it's in technology, whether it's a product, whether it's in design, art. These are just good principles of doing a business and setting up a business. Is joint venture important in today's business world? And if the answer is yes, then at what extent is it? So in my last business, I had a joint venture with a big multinational, multi-billion dollar company. And there was a need for the business to do the joint venture. So if you think there are certain skills which are missing in your company, the first thing is to hire people. If you think even by hiring certain capacities, capabilities, skills you cannot get in your business, then you need to go and find an organization with which you do joint venture. So together, you're more than what you would do by yourself. What are the things to follow to reduce risk? We've talked about risk quite a bit. Question about something said in the beginning and related to scale. Why do we have to aim for becoming such a big company? These were all examples of multinationals. We did mention about kind of scaling up the business towards the end as well. And you don't have to. You can really be a small niche company. But if you are, when I talk about scale, it doesn't mean you need hundreds and thousands of employees. When I talk about scale, I mean, if you're offering something, you might want to look at scaling up the impact. You might, if you're trying to address a challenge in the society, there might be a lot of people who have that challenge and who might want to use your services. So they might want to come to you and ask for more and more. So you should be prepared to have that scale. But if you want to focus, if you are a cafe in a small town, on a Spanish beach, in a beach in Spain, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to scale the business. You have your own captive audience, people from the town who come. You sell a few coffees every day. That's absolutely fine. It really depends why you are setting up the business, and that would decide whether you want to scale it up or not. We have a couple more minutes. We have an idea for a business, are working on the model, but we lack people with certain expertise from other fields. How to best find the people we need? Is there a forum, website, etc.? So it's a very good question. And I mentioned about people being the key to the success of business. So from this stage, when you thought of the idea, to when you become successful, whether you become big or small, there will be different skills you would need at different times, including getting a CEO for the business, because you might be good in the product but not in running a business. So you can get, I was talking about beg, borrow and steal. When you don't have resources, you get interns. When you have resources, you hire people. When you have more resources, you go to recruitment firms who will find the people. When you have more resources, you go and headhunt people from other organizations. So, and how do you find people? With the digitization and social media and your network, your university, go back to your university. We run programs in Climate Kick. You run programs in Marie Curie. Approach, cold call people on LinkedIn, drop them a message. Advertise your project as a MSc project or a bachelor's project to get people to volunteer time. I've done all of that. And that is how, with limited resources, you can get a lot of skills. But there has to be something for the other person as well. There has to be a win-win situation for the other person who's getting involved. I think we've pretty much covered some of the key questions which came out, and it's time as well. I just want to say thank you, and I just want to repeat that it's an excellent journey. And if you're thinking of being an entrepreneur, then do venture out, do try, be entrepreneurial. And it's not just about setting up a business, although that's what we talked about. It's about who you are as a person in your personal life, in your research, when you do a job. It's about thinking laterally, thinking big, thinking bigger, thinking about what is it that I'm trying to do, what are the needs that I'm trying to address. So whether the startup works or not, it will help you as an individual, as a professional. Now, just before we hang out, that's it from my side. Thank you. Feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. With this webinar, We now close the current semester of the webinars which the Alumni Association has been hosting. And the new webinars will start in September, and you will be notified by the organizers. You will also receive an email with useful links to the PDF of the presentation, to the final YouTube video, accessible whenever you want, wherever you want. And very important, the survey, because we really want to know how can we do our next webinar better. What kind of speakers do we bring, if there is a different way of doing it. So do take out 2 minutes and kind of give your suggestions, and give them as points for improvement, which is kind of critique rather than criticize. And we would love to kind of hear from you on that. We're all running quite a few programs. Now we're looking at how we can support Marie Curie fellows as well on innovation, entrepreneurship. So do check the website as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.